The House comes to questions for oral answer. Question number 1 in the name of Metiria Turei.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, I mihi kia aroha kia te whare, ki te whare. Mai, kia ora, kia ora.
Question number 1, Metiria Turei. Please have the question.
My question, sir, is to the Prime Minister and asks, does he stand by his statement, quote, get some guts and join the right side, end quote?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, absolutely I do.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the Prime Minister take his own advice to get some guts and stop negotiating a trade deal with Saudi Arabia, a regime that executes children?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, no.
Order. Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. How does the Prime Minister reconcile negotiating a trade deal with Saudi Arabia where children are imprisoned for life and publicly flogged, while claiming the suffering of children as a justification for going to war?
Mr Speaker,
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The New Zealand Government, and through successive foreign ministers and through the Ministry for a long time, has advocated strongly for human rights and stood up and made clear our concern when we see those. That does not stop us negotiating free trade agreements with countries for whom we have some concerns about their human rights. We've done that over successive governments.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Why will the Prime Minister not make any trade deal with Saudi Arabia conditional on the Saudi Arabia regime halting the execution of children?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, as I said earlier, I stand by my answer to the last question, that we advocate strongly for human rights, but that is not a condition for which we set a free trade agreement. Neither has it been for the Labor government, but of course also we would need to look at the conditions and the claims that the member is making and check the veracity of them.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the Prime Minister take his own advice to get some guts and make the $20 million in aid he gives to Indonesia each year conditional on the Indonesian regime not shooting dead children in their school uniforms?
Speaker.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, again, we would have to check the veracity of the members' statements. They sound fairly outrageous, but again, I stand by the same record, which is New Zealand gives humanitarian aid because the aid is actually aimed at supporting the people who are most in need. Like many countries, they can't always necessarily control who's in charge.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Can the Prime Minister explain why, if child soldiers are a reason to go to war in Iraq, why then not Nigeria, where Boko Haram have kidnapped hundreds of children and recently murdered a 7-year-old girl by using her as a suicide bomber?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, the government is outraged by what we see in Nigeria and with Boko Haram, and we continue to follow the principles that we're also following in Iraq and Syria and Libya and other countries, which is in relation to the diplomatic and humanitarian work we do. The Iraqi government in particular has asked for help in relation to ISIL, and we believe that in doing that we are supporting the people not only of that region, but we're actually supporting New Zealanders themselves. I heard the member saying to the press gallery words to the effect of that we should live in some cocooned world where we do nothing because somehow New Zealanders will be safe. Well, I'm sorry about that. New Zealanders travel and there are domestic terror threats from ISIL, whether that member wants to accept that or not.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
So is the Prime Minister telling this House that he will accept taking economic benefits through trade deals from countries like Saudi Arabia and Indonesia and others, where children are routinely tortured, where they are imprisoned, and where they are murdered by those regimes, and he thinks he's doing it in New Zealanders' name?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Simply making the point that there are many countries in the world for which New Zealand has a free trade agreement. It has negotiated those across successive governments for which there are human rights concerns that we have, and we raise those issues.
Question number 2, Andrew Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.